Good morning, everybody. It's Dave. It's my trusty feline Bo. We're headed out to the garden today. But first, we're actually going to take a look at this planter bed because I spent some time pulling out some weeds. There's Bo. And got it mulched. So now my next goal is, of course, to continue on the brick pathway, or I guess it would be the brick border. So it's looking really good. And then it ends right about here. So I'm going to take it along the front of the magnolia over here and continuing it on to the arbor. So that's going to be my goal over the next couple of weeks. Since we're over here on this side, we'll take a look at some plants over here, but also take a look at the height difference we have. And this is what's great about having this raised planter around the patio, is that it does sink down several inches compared to the patio, probably about 4 or 5 inches in terms of overall height. So with the planter, it levels everything out and it makes a real nice beginning to the lawn area over here. Back up against the wall, we've got the zinnias doing absolutely terrific. We've had a relatively mild week, right around 90 every single day, but unfortunately today, tomorrow may be the last of that. We're gonna zip back up to the high 90s for another week, and then it's supposed to cool down after that. But it is August, and for those of you watching, it is August 1st, 2024. So beautiful geranium here. The Pieris in the back. A few plants back here still. I haven't really planted anything because of the weather. I've cut a few things back, cleaned some things up. So everything is real nice and green and all, but for right now, this is where everything is going to be staying. And it only gets a couple hours of sun a day. Look at how beautiful that taro is. The plumeria still doing really nicely. Looking forward to planting that as well. I need to cut back. Look at that denseness of that lavender trumpet vine. I mean, you can't really ask for a better vine. The only bad thing is you do get, for us, we've got some possums that love to crawl within it. And of course, that makes Bo a little bit upset. The echinacea, or coneflower. Got a bloom on the daylily there. Some orchids on a sphagnum moss. We've already got some leaf burning on this Japanese maple. It's not a bloodgood. I'm not quite sure which variety it is. Beautiful impatiens down below. And mirror plant, or caprasma, is the botanical name. Very, very hardy plant. Used to be really popular in the 1950s and 60s. Then it fell out of favor, but there are so many really cool varieties. You'll see some planted in the rose garden as well. They're very, very hardy, and definitely I suggest planting one or several of them. Also, it's growing great is the Dahlia, the rabbit's foot fern here, and likewise up in the hanging basket as well. And of course, this is always a popular fern because of the feet, the rabbit's foot part of it. And let's see if there's anything else we should talk about. The variegated scented geranium here. Can't say enough about the Japanese maple Shishigashira. Got the pomegranate, fully leafed out, absolutely beautiful. Perfect plant for this situation. The magnolia variety is Elizabeth Yellowflower. This is the bloodgood Japanese maple. The Cheonanthus, the Chinese fringe tree over here, looking terrific, putting on some new growth. That's exactly what we want. Disigothica falsaralia in the back corner, dwarf pittosporum, some gardenias around the base, another Japanese maple over here, also blood good. Got Bo sneaking up on us. We'll walk over to the rose garden for just a moment, take a look at that. It is kind of an overcast afternoon, which means, of course, it's very, very humid. About 70% humidity this afternoon. Got the dogwood right here. Everything just got watered yesterday, so everything's still looking pretty fresh. Beautiful daylily, bicolor there. Dahlia, not as vigorous as last year when it was first planted. Variegated Chamaecyparis down below. Westringia, looking forward to that blooming. It did transplant. We transplanted it right about first of the year. Got Bo next to the Ajuga, and also one of the cypress here. Back here is the hemlock, surrounded by, unfortunately, nutgrass. Spent some time getting that cleaned up this week. Not a whole lot to show you as far as roses blooming, but I did want to show you over here. That is Casablanca. And Casablanca is an absolutely beautiful, super fragrant, not super fragrant, you do have to be up against it to smell the blossom, but it's a very clean fragrance. And it's just really a fantastic lily for the yard. Over here, again, not a whole lot. We're kind of, we're in August now. It's time to go ahead and do some maintenance, like pruning of the bearded iris, also thinning out any branches that we're normally going to take out during the winter time on fruit trees. This is a cherry tree here. I had a branch the other day that I took out. You can kind of see the cut right there. It wasn't going to be saved during the winter time. So with that, thins out the plant a little bit, makes it look really nice and healthy. Apricot over here, followed by that beautiful gumdrop bay laurel. We do have some blooms here on the Sambac Jasmine. This is called Grand Duke. It is a variety from Monrovia Nursery Company. Something like this that was in a 2-gallon container, that set me back about $60, and I bought this a year and a half ago. You can get some 1 gallons, I'm sure, for anywhere from $25 to $30, maybe $35, and they're definitely good to put in the garden. Behind it, we've got this beautiful red dragon Japanese maple, which is beginning to show some really cool kind of orangish colors. Got another Chamaecyparis back here. And I did spend a lot of time also cleaning up on the roof. There was these major branches on the champaka tree that were hanging over the roof line. Those got cut back and kind of filled up the trash can for this week. So other than that, the tree looks really nice and healthy. And that may be everything for this week that I wanted to point out. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and take you to the computer and show you some of the bulbs that you should think about buying over the next month or two, because it is as we get into summertime, it's a great time to start planning for the fall and ordering those bulbs early so they don't sell out. Bulbs will normally come into the nurseries first week of September, maybe even last week of August. And it's always good to buy them as early as possible and to plant them for the best selection, best quality of bulbs. But after that, pickings get kind of slim. So let me take you over to the computer and I'll show you some great varieties to think about. Hey everyone, it is Dave and I am on the White Flower Farm webpage, and as you can see, it's time to pre-order your fall bulbs. That is one of the cool things about August, no pun intended there, and it is one of the times of year I absolutely loved working in the nursery industry, especially when we got into the end of August when these fall bulbs would start to come into the store. It's one of the first harbingers of fall weather and cooler weather. White Flower Farms is someone I've dealt with several times. I've gotten great service from them, great plant quality, and I'm going to show you some of the bulbs that are on their website. So for daffodils, they have a number of different ways that you can buy them. You can buy them how the daffodil looks, you can buy them in mixes, or you can also buy them individually as far as if you know the name of the daffodil that you want. One thing I do want to point out is that even though these are all classified as daffodils, there will be several that will have the term narcissus, and in the industry those are pretty synonymous terms. Keep in mind though, some of the narcissus, such as this one down here, Dainty Miss, is a much smaller flower, smaller plant, thinner foliage. Other than that, some of them are just regular size as well. So there are a number of great daffodils that you can buy. That's the term I'm going to use, even though, for instance, Dutch Master is labeled as a narcissus. It's a daffodil, and this has a very large flower, probably the size of a silver dollar, and it is an old-time heirloom variety. When I was selling this back in the 80s, this was still a very vintage type of variety. The daffodils normally run a little bit over $1.50 a bulb on this site. So you're looking at, for instance, a dozen bulbs for $19. That is not a bad deal. Keep in mind with these companies, there may be tax, there may be shipping involved as well. So that's always going to add to your order price. So just keep that in mind. For this also, sometimes they'll have really good buys. For instance, you can get 100 Dutch Master daffodils for $53. That's 50 cents a bulb, and you can't beat that at all. When you plant bulbs, you're generally going to plant them in clusters. So you're not looking at 100 different parts of the garden you're going to put a bulb. You're probably going to put minimum of 6 of these together, maybe a dozen together. That is probably something I would do for my garden. So when I look at, we'll bring up some 5-star daffodils. And this apricot whirl, this is a really beautiful one. It is a fairly newer variety. And so in this case, you're only getting 6 bulbs for $18. So you're paying like $3 a bulb. But I mean, this is a beautiful, looks like a double or semi-double flower. Sometimes the narcissus will have, or daffodils will have, a fragrance to them. Besides that, you can always get the different mixes as well. Sometimes they will suggest plantings like with hostas or with daylilies. That's fine to get as well. Again, they're generally pretty pricey, but when you break down per plant how much they are, and if you've got a fairly good empty area to deal with, this is not a bad deal at all. Besides daffodils, we also have a number of tulips to buy. Now, with tulips, it depends on where you live and what zone. With daffodils or narcissus, they pretty much grow in every single zone, and as long as the ground doesn't stay sopping wet during the time where they're dormant, the bulbs will naturalize and come back. I have daffodils growing in this garden that have been coming back every single year and multiplying for like 30 years. With the tulips, it's a different deal. I live in an area where it doesn't get cold enough in the winter normally for these to bloom, so they are planted like annuals, where you buy them every year, you're going to refrigerate them to make sure that they bloom, and then you're going to plant them out, and it's kind of a one-shot deal. Other places in the country, they just come up like normal, but here in Southern California, they do not do that. Again, you can buy them for a number of different ways in terms of mixes and color palettes, and then we also have the different varieties. A few that are very popular would be like Apricot Beauty here. This is, again, one of the heirloom types of tulips. If this is the first time you're growing these, Apricot Beauty is probably a really good variety to get, and you're looking at about $1.50, a little bit more than that per bulb. Again, always think about shipping, always think about taxes added on to that as well. Besides that, you can go down with all the different flower types from fringed to heirloom, and for me, I really like the parrot tulips, which are like these here. I'm going to zoom into this particular one, silver parrot, where you have a variegated leaf, you have a bicolor flower. Look at the way that the flower petals are shaped and fringed along the outside. It is an excellent bulb to get for the yard. Also, let's take a look at the fringed tulips. Like this here, you can see the edges of the petal look like they're shredded. Again, just a very delicate, beautiful flower. And you can always, of course, if you just want to stick with the 5-star tulips, that is great as well. And especially if it's your first time, part of gardening is trying new things out and seeing if they're successful for you. These are not going to be successful in everyone's garden. Some of you are going to have tremendous amounts of success. So take a look, see what really speaks to you. Like the exotic emperor, that looks like a really cool one to go with. The nice thing about the White Flower Farm website is that they do have multiple pictures. That one looks like it has a little yellowish tone to it. But again, price is right for those. And we'll take a look at some specialty bulbs since we're here. Other plants, other bulbs that you can plant this time of year would be anemones. They don't have a huge selection of these, but when you look at the prices on them, they're about $1 a bulb, 25 for $24. And again, you're looking at planting these in small clusters, probably 6 per cluster is what I'm looking for. Chinodoxia, which is probably totally pronounced incorrectly. But these are wonderful naturalizers for the yard if you have a woodland garden, a shaded garden, and here this is a really economical one where you get 50 bulbs for $14. This is something that will come back year after year after year and is just a lovely plant for the yard. Crocus. Is it bad to say I've never liked crocus? But I've never liked it, and growing up in Southern California, this is not something that naturalizes. Again, I'm sure if you're in other parts of the U.S., covered with snow, woodland gardens, these come up and naturalize. For us, it's always been a struggle. So this is actually one of the bulbs that if you were in a warm climate, I would probably say there's some better choices out there. If you're in an eastern climate, if you're up north, like our friends in Canada, that is going to be a much more common type of plant for you. What else do we want to look at? Galanthus. Galanthus is an amazing bulb. It kind of has that narcissus type flower to it. Again, these are going to be fairly small, thin foliage, but they are a naturalizer and they grow so easy. Again, something to stick around a tree base, something to stick in the shaded areas of the garden. And let's look at some individual varieties. Again, about $1 a bulb on these, so that's not bad at all. They don't get very large, but again, they do naturalize. And generally speaking too, these are an early flowering bulb as well, depending of course on your climate. And we've got hyacinths. Hyacinths are extremely fragrant. They are wonderful bulbs to put in. I have had them naturalize here in Southern California. They do require a colder climate. Normally, if I were getting the bulbs and I lived in Southern California, I'm probably sticking them in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. But other than that, I'm going to kind of just plant them out in the garden. And like I say, I've been pretty successful with them. So let's take a look at prices. So Yellowstone here, 6 bulbs for $15, so about $2.50 a bulb on these. That's not bad at all. Hyacinths tend to be fairly expensive, but for the fragrance, they're incredible. And the last thing I think we'll cover is, at least today, is Scilla. They do naturalize. They tend to be inexpensive. So you're looking at 50 bulbs for $17, usually in the pinks, sometimes in the white. And I should also say that we're going to take a look at the Dutch iris here real quick. They don't have a huge selection of them. Let's take a look at the Dutch iris mix. These are Dutch iris compared to the bearded iris that you've seen in my garden. The flowers are a little bit smaller, daintier. They are beautiful for the garden. They come up about 2 feet or so as far as height goes. Here you have 25 bulbs for $19. I would not complain about that at all. And again, plant them in clusters so that they do have a little bit more of a show in springtime. So I think I'm going to return you back to my garden video at this time. Next week I'll go over another website, and happy gardening. All right, that was it, everyone. We're going to go ahead and take off. Bo's going to go grab some dinner, and we will see you next week with another tour of the garden.